She is not coming back. Tell her mother what you like, but do not bring me into it. You cannot just leave me here with this. I was never part of this plan, not from the beginning. Then why did you follow us? Because you said it would take 1 hour, and now look. Nobody will believe us anyway, so we say nothing, we saw nothing, we know nothing. When Sade finally walked back into the compound that evening, her wrappers were torn at the hem and her feet were caked with red laterite dust that went all the way up to her knees. Her aunt saw her from the doorway and screamed. Not from relief, from the look on Sade's face. It was not the face of a girl who had been lost and found her way back. It was not the face of someone who had simply wandered too far and turned around. It was the face of a person who had seen something that rearranged the inside of her, quietly, without her permission, and had not yet found the words for what was now living there. Her 2 friends had gone out with her that morning. 3 of them left that compound together before the sun reached its full height. By the time Sade returned, the sun was already low and orange behind the mango trees, and nobody could tell her what had happened to the other 2, because nobody had seen them. Nobody except Sade. And the moment she opened her mouth to speak, what came out was not an explanation, it was not a name, not a direction, not a cry for help. It was a question. Did anyone else hear the drumming? The compound went silent. There had been no drumming, not that day, not in that part of Abeokuta, not anywhere that anyone could point to or confirm. But Sade had heard it. She was certain. She had heard it, and so had the others. And that sound, that steady, low drumming that seemed to come from beneath the earth rather than across it, was exactly what drew all 3 of them off the main road and into the bush path. 3 young women from the same street in Abeokuta. The kind of street where everybody knew everybody's business before they knew it themselves. Where the smell of ogbono cooking in one kitchen drifted into 3 other compounds by the time it was ready. Where nothing that happened before noon stayed private past sundown. Sade was the quiet one, 23 years old, just returned from 2 years working in Lagos, still finding her feet in a town that felt both familiar and slightly smaller than the version she had kept in her memory. She had a stillness to her that people sometimes mistook for shyness. It was not shyness. It was the particular calm of someone who watches more than she speaks, and therefore sees more than most. Remy was the one who made decisions and announced them as suggestions. She was bold in the way that only people who have never truly faced a consequence can be bold, confident, fast-talking, the kind of person who could talk you into standing in the rain and make you feel it was your own idea. She and Sade had been close since secondary school, bound together by the easy, unexamined loyalty of girls who have shared enough small secrets to feel permanently tied. Kike was newer to their circle, 24, recently engaged, always with her wrapper tied perfectly and her hair done freshly. The kind of woman who treated composure as a discipline. She had grown up hearing about the bush path. Her grandmother had mentioned it the way grandmothers mention such things, once, quietly, without elaboration, in the voice that means, I will not say this again, so you had better carry it. That morning, the 3 of them had set out together to deliver a birthday gift to a relative on the other side of town, a simple errand on a clear Saturday. The sky was the bright washed blue that only comes after a night of rain, and the street was still cool with it. They were laughing when they first heard it. Not a laugh that stopped abruptly, not the kind you read about in stories, just laughter, ordinary and warm, the laughter of 3 women walking together with nowhere urgent to be. And underneath that laughter, so low it was almost nothing, A rhythm began, steady, patient, as though it had been there for a while and was simply waiting for a moment of quiet to be heard. Remy stopped first. "Wait, do you hear that?" Sade heard it. She heard it clearly, and something in her chest responded to it the way a tuning fork responds to a note it already knows. And Kike, who had been told by her grandmother never to follow a sound she could not place, Kike heard it too. That was how it began. Not with a dare, not with a forbidding place someone pointed to on a map, with a sound that all three of them heard and none of them should have followed. And that was the first thing the elders would later say when the story finally came out. The drumming of Igboaye, the forest of the living world's edge, was not for young ears. It was not for anyone still in the middle of their life's business. To hear it clearly was already a sign. To follow it was something else entirely. The bush path announced itself the way wrong roads always do. Gradually, so that by the time you notice the change, you are already too far in to feel the turning back was worth it. The main road was still visible behind them when Remy said, "It is coming from in there." Sade looked at the path, narrow, older than the road beside it. The kind of path that has not been made by repeated use, but by something else. Something that does not need to clear its way because the bush simply opens for it. "We should not go in there," Sade said. "It is just a path." "Remy." "Sade, we are not children. We will walk in, see what is making that sound, and walk back out. 5 minutes. Kike had gone quiet. She was looking at the opening in the bush the way you look at something that has called your name in a crowd, trying to confirm whether you actually heard it or only imagined that you did. "My grandmother used to say this road leads nowhere good," she said, and her voice came out smaller than she intended. Remy turned to her with the easy smile of someone who has never taken a warning seriously enough to be punished by one. "Your grandmother also said not to eat with your left hand and that sneezing at night brought bad luck. Are we still doing all of that?" Kike said nothing. And Remy, reading that silence as permission, was already 3 steps into the path. This is the moment that matters. Not the moment they had the drumming, not even the moment the path appeared. The moment that mattered was this one, when Kike looked at Sade and Sade looked back, and neither of them moved to stop what was already moving. Because the most dangerous thing about following someone who is already walking is that standing still begins to feel like the braver choice when it is actually the wiser one. They followed her in. The drumming grew clearer as they entered, but not louder. That was the strange thing. It did not get louder, it got closer, as though the sound had never been coming from a place at all, but from a direction that only revealed itself once you were moving toward it. The air changed, not dramatically, just enough, cooler than it should have been under that canopy, carrying the smell of wet earth and something older beneath it, the smell of ground that has been turned and turned again over many years, though by what hands and for what purpose, nobody standing on it could say. Their voices dropped without agreement. Their steps slowed. And the laughter, that easy, ordinary laughter that had been with them since they left the compound, went out like a lamp someone had quietly reached over and covered with their palm. They walked for what felt like 10 minutes before the bush opened. The clearing was not large, perhaps the size of 2 rooms, roofless, floored with dark earth, and ringed by trees so tall their tops blurred into one another. In the center of the clearing stood a single Iroko tree, older than anything nearby, its roots rising from the ground like the knuckles of a buried hand. The drumming had stopped. Not faded, stopped. The way a conversation stops when the person you are walking toward realizes you are near. Sade felt it before she understood it. A shift, like the moment between a question and its answer. Remy laughed, but it came out wrong. Too short, too tight. So, this is what all the fuss is about. Neither Sade nor Kike responded. At the base of the Iroko, where the largest root curved away from the trunk, something was hanging. Not placed on the ground, hanging, suspended from a low branch by a cord of dark cloth. It moved slightly, though there was no wind. It was a small clay vessel, sealed at the top with white cloth and bound 3 times with a cord of red thread. Kike grabbed Sade's arm. Sade already felt it. The weight in the clearing had changed the moment their eyes landed on the vessel. Not danger exactly, but a kind of attention. The feeling of being in a space that was suddenly, quietly aware of them. "Leave it," Sade said. "Remy, nobody said to touch it," but she was already walking toward it. "Remy, do not touch that thing. I am just looking." She was not just looking. Her hand was already reaching. And many times in life, the most destructive actions are performed by people who have convinced themselves they are doing something smaller than what they are actually doing. Remy did not think she was making a choice that would end one thing and begin another. She thought she was satisfying a curiosity. She thought the two were different. She lifted the vessel from the branch. The cord of red thread broke as she did. Clean, as though it had been waiting. The clearing went very still. Not quiet, it had already been quiet. Still, in the way that water goes still when something large moves just beneath the surface. Kike made a sound Sade had never heard from her before. Not a scream. Smaller than a scream. The sound a person makes when fear arrives so completely that it bypasses the throat entirely and comes out as barely more than breath. Remy stood, holding the clay vessel. Her expression said she already regretted it, but had not decided yet whether to admit that. "Put it back," Sade said. "I cannot put it back. The cord is broken." "Put it back on the branch." "Sade, now, Remy." But the branch was empty. And the branch was also, and this was the thing Sade could not explain afterward, the thing that unraveled her sleep for years, 6 feet higher than it had been when Remy reached up to take the vessel from it. Nobody had moved the branch, nobody had touched the tree. It had simply risen. Sade looked at Kike, Kike looked at Sade. And that was when Remy began to hum. Before we go further, if this story is reaching something in you, take a moment right now, like this video, drop a comment and subscribe to Bola's Folktales. We tell stories that stay with you for the people who need to hear them. Now, back to what happened in that clearing. It was not a song Sade recognized. Not a song Kike recognized either. They would confirm this later, in the low voices of people comparing the details of a shared nightmare. It was the drumming. Remy was humming the drumming, the same rhythm, note for note, as though she had always known it and had only been waiting for the right moment to let it out. Her eyes were open. She was standing upright, the clay vessel in both hands, her lips moving around a sound that had no name either of them knew. "Remy?" Nothing. "Remy?" Kike grabbed her arm. Remy turned, not wrong exactly, just far, like someone interrupted from a great distance. "Did you hear it? It has a name. I know what it is called now." "I do not want to know," Sade said. "Put the vessel down. We are leaving." "You cannot put it down once you have held it." She said this without fear, the way you state a rule long known. Someone has to carry it out. They walked her to the edge of the clearing. Kike kept her hand on Remy's arm. Sade kept her eyes on the tree line. Then Remy stopped. This is the wrong direction. It is the direction we came from. That is not the road. Sade turned. The light she had been using as a compass, the pale opening in the trees, was gone. Not dimmed, gone. Replaced by the same unbroken wall of green on every side. Her heart did not race. It went cold. Fear large enough does not speed things up. It stops them. Kike, which direction did we come from? Kike turned slowly, looked again. I do not know. Remy was still humming. Stop. The humming stopped. A breathable moment, just trees, just earth, just three women where they should not be. Then Kike looked at the iroko. The vessel was back on the branch. Remy's hands were empty, her palms turned upward, staring at them as though trying to remember where she had set something down. The red cord was whole, bound 3 times, exactly as they had found it. Remy sat down on the ground, not collapsed, sat, pressed her palms flat against the earth. I cannot stand up. Remy, get up. My legs are not working. Sade knelt, took her hands. They were warm, steady, exactly as they always felt, which was somehow the worst thing of all. Look at me. What is your mother's name? A pause 3 seconds too long. Mama, she said. Her name. Remy opened her mouth, closed it. The name did not come. Sade stood. She looked at Kike over Remy's head. The conversation they had without speaking was one of the most terrible either of them would ever have. They could not carry her. They could not read the bush. They had perhaps an hour of light. They made the only choice available. They left her there and went for help. And that was the moment Sade would spend the rest of her life trying to make peace with. Not the humming, not the vessel, not the branch that rose. The moment she turned away from her friend, sitting on the dark earth with empty palms, and walked. Sade and Kike found the path, or the path found them. She could never be sure which. One moment there was nothing but trees. The next, the narrow opening was simply there, patient as something that knows it will eventually be needed. They ran, not panicked running, purposeful. The running of people who know exactly how much time they may or may not have. They broke through to the road. A bread seller, a man on a bicycle with a radio in his basket. The ordinary, solid world. Sade was already looking for a phone before Kike had straightened up. She called Remy's uncle. He came with 2 other men within 20 minutes. They walked the path for 40 minutes in every direction. They called Remy's name until the sound of it felt strange in their mouths. They found nothing. No clearing, no iroko, no vessel, no Remy. Sade walked out of that bush and understood, in a way that had nothing to do with logic, that the path had given her back and kept what it wanted. They returned the next morning and the morning after that. By the 4th day, over 20 people had walked every inch of that bush and come out with nothing but scratches and an unease that settled into their bones and stayed. Kike did not speak for 9 days. When she finally did, she told her grandmother everything. The old woman listened without interrupting, without disbelief. When Kike finished, her grandmother asked, "Did any of you hear the drumming before you saw the path?" "Yes." The old woman nodded, once, slowly. "Then it was not a path. It was an invitation, and your friend answered it before any of you understood the question." "Can she come back?" Her grandmother looked at her with the particular gentleness reserved for questions whose honest answer costs more than the person asking is ready to pay. What enters a boyer with an open hand does not return with the same hand it carried in. Remy was never found. This story is told in Abeokuta still. Not loudly, not in the way that stories are told when people want to be heard, but quietly, in the way that warnings are passed from one generation to the next, when the people giving them want the warning to land correctly and stay. The elders who know of Igboaye do not describe it as an evil place. They have never called it that. Evil, they say, is a simple word for a complicated thing. What lives at the edge of that forest is not evil, it is old, and it is particular, and it does not take what is not offered. Remy offered, not with intention, not with the full knowledge of what she was giving or to whom, but intention is not always required. The hand that reaches is the hand that speaks. This is the truth that lives at the center of what happened to those three women. And it is a truth that has nothing to do with forests or clay vessels or drumming from beneath the earth. It is a truth about curiosity that has been separated from caution, about the quiet arrogance of believing that warnings given by those who came before us are for smaller, more fearful people and not for us, who are smarter, who are braver, who simply want to see what is actually there. Sade saw what was actually there. She carried it home. She carries it still. Not everything that calls to you is calling you forward. Some things call to find out what you are made of, and they keep whatever answers them before you have had the chance to think. The old women of that street in Abeokuta knew. They had always known. They did not explain it in terms that could be verified or argued with, because wisdom of that kind does not offer itself for debate. It offers itself once, simply, in the voice that means, I will not say this again, so you had better carry it. Kike carried it. She is still in Abeokuta. She does not walk that road anymore. She teaches her children the way her grandmother taught her, once, quietly, without elaboration. Sade carried it in a different way. She became the kind of person who pauses before following, who asks before reaching, what is this, and do I have the right to touch it? Who has learned at a cost she did not choose that restraint is not weakness, that stopping is not the same as fear, and that some sounds, some paths, some invitations are not refused out of cowardice. They are refused out of the deep and hard-won knowledge that not everything offered to you is meant to be yours. And Remy, whatever became of Remy belongs now to a place we cannot follow, and a story none of us can finish. What we can say is this. She was not a bad person. She was curious and bold and alive in the particular way that some people are alive, brightly, at full volume, ahead of every room she entered. The forest did not take her because she was reckless. It took her because she answered before she listened. And that is the lesson. Not the forest, not the vessel, not the drumming. The lesson is this. Listen before you answer. Understand what is being asked before you give yourself to it. Because the world is full of invitations, from people, from places, from opportunities that arrive wearing the face of gifts, and not all of them wish you well. Some only want to know how quickly you will come when they call. Do not be quick. Be wise, be still, and if you are ever standing at the edge of a path that should not be there, in a bush that has gone suddenly quiet around you, and you feel something beneath the earth beginning to beat, pause. Just pause. And ask yourself, whose drum is this? Tell me in the comments, do you believe what happened to Remy was a punishment? Or do you believe the forest simply took what was offered to it without judgment, the way nature always does? Leave your answer below. There is no wrong answer, only honest ones. If this story stayed with you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Bola's Folktales if you have not already done so. Before I let you go, I want to take a moment for those of you who showed up for our last story. I read every comment, and to every single person who has been watching quietly and has not yet dropped a comment, I see you, I appreciate you more than you know. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. More stories are coming. Stories that will make you think, make you feel, and make you want to carry something careful back home with you. Thank you for watching Bola's Folktales, and I will see you in the next one.